Fidel Castro, the revolutionary leader of Cuba who came to power in 1959, was one of the most divisive and consequential figures of the 20th century. During his nearly 50 years in power, Castro was the target of 634 assassination attempts. The CIA, anti-Castro exiles, and even the Mafia all made attempts to achieve this. All of the plots, from those involving exploding cigars to those involving scuba equipment laced with poison, were fantastically original and far-fetched. It is difficult to overstate Fidel Castro's significance in Cuban and global history. He was born into affluence in Biran, Cuba in 1926, attended some of the country's top high schools, and eventually earned a law degree from the University of Havana. But he quickly lost faith in Cuba's government, which he saw as corrupt and subservient to outside powers. Hallmark History is proud to present one of the most intriguing eras in modern Cuba's history. A glimpse into the international intrigue, daring plots, and the unbreakable will of a leader who refused to be silenced that comprise the 634 attempts on Fidel Castro's life. We'll travel from the Sierra Maestra's thick jungles to Havana's bustling streets to learn more about this thrilling chapter in Cuban history, investigating the plotters' motivations, strategies, and fascinating Cold War-era tales. Please like and subscribe to this channel if you love historical facts, from the personal drama of Fidel Castro's brush with death to the wider geopolitical ramifications of the plot. After leading a failed rebellion against President Fulgencio Batista's government in 1953, Castro spent 2 years in jail before being released as part of a nationwide amnesty. He persisted in his revolutionary activities despite this setback, and in 1956 he took a small group of rebels into the Sierra Maestra Mountains and led them in a guerrilla war against Batista's forces. While initially outnumbered and poorly equipped, Castro's army eventually overthrew Batista's government in 1959. When Castro took power in Cuba, he immediately began a series of radical socialist reforms, such as nationalizing industry and redistributing land. The United States and other Western powers saw Cuba as a threat to their interests in the region, and they reacted angrily to Castro's government, which quickly gained a reputation for its commitment to social justice and anti-imperialism. The United States attempted and failed to invade Cuba at the Bay of Pigs in 1961, and the following year, the world came dangerously close to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Castro's government survived and even thrived despite these setbacks. Cuba is now a leading light in the non-aligned movement and a beacon of socialist revolution around the world. However, Castro himself remained a divisive figure, with some Cubans seeing him as a hero and others seeing him as a tyrant who violated basic rights. In the early morning hours of July 26, 1961, a brave and daring group of Cuban exiles, led by Rolando Masferrer, attempted to assassinate Fidel Castro. Masferrer had been a prominent figure in pre-revolutionary Cuba and had since become a major anti-Castro leader in exile. The attack was to take place at a bridge near the town of Bayamo, in eastern Cuba. The plan was for the attackers to set up a roadblock and then fire upon Castro's convoy with machine guns and bazookas. However, the plan failed and the attackers were quickly defeated. The Cuban military had been forewarned of the attack, and they were able to fight off the attackers and protect Castro. The attackers were arrested and later executed. Fidel Castro survived the attempted assassination. Fabian Escalante, the former head of Cuban intelligence, claimed to a British documentary crew roughly 10 years ago that the CIA had attempted to assassinate Fidel Castro 634 times over the course of roughly 40 years. Whether or not that number is correct, the iconic Cuban dictator presented an almost mythical opponent for the CIA's obsessive, blundering attempt to eliminate him. Did Escalante overstate his case? It's difficult to say for sure, but declassified CIA reports and the accounts of some would-be killers suggest that Castro may have been the target of more than a few CIA assassination attempts. Many of these plots never went anywhere beyond the collective imagination of the most powerful spy organization in the world. When confronted with reality, they shrank. There are probably a bunch of anonymous creators and an outlandish workplace culture behind this list of explosive cigars and flesh-eating wetsuits. The list hints at a convoluted bureaucracy that protected its employees from scrutiny while giving them free rein to eliminate a mythical but potent enemy of the United States. After years of this, on November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. To paraphrase Escalante, the Kennedy administration allegedly made 42 attempts to eliminate Castro. Findings in the 1970s revealed the CIA was abusing its authority, prompting a government inquiry. Although President Ford outlawed political assassinations in 1976, Escalante claims they persisted for another 2 decades, right up through the 1990s and Clinton's presidency. Attempted assassinations of Castro by the agency ranged from disastrous to comical. The Church Committee, a 1975 Senate Special Subcommittee chaired by the Democratic Senator Frank Church, detailed many of them. Some of the more impressive ones will be discussed in this video. 1. Smoke bomb cigar. In 1967, a newspaper claimed that the CIA had suggested to a New York City police officer that they slip Castro a cigar rigged with enough explosives to blow off his head the previous year. This has never been proven, but we do know that the CIA employed cigars in a different assassination attempt. The CIA infected a box of Castro's preferred cigars in 1960, which is widely regarded as the most infamous attempt to assassinate him. Less than 2 years after Castro's rise to power, the agency laced the cigars with a lethal dose of botulinum toxin. Although the subcommittee claims the cigars were delivered to an unidentified person in 1961, their subsequent fate remains unknown. Obviously, El Comandante never chewed on them. 2. Conspiracy-inspired ice cream from the Mafia. It was in Havana in 1961 and like cigars, Castro had a sweet tooth, and the CIA devised a plan to poison his favorite dessert. To accomplish this, they solicited assistance from the island's casino mafia, who had been forced to leave when Castro came to power and banned gambling. There are rumors that the mafia in Havana's capital city managed to slip a poison pill to a cafe worker. It has been speculated that the worker was supposed to mix the poison into an ice cream cone, while others have suggested that it was a milkshake. But the poison was frozen solid and could not be removed at the crucial moment. There was a frozen snarl-up. That was the nearest thing the CIA ever got to arrest the wanted man. 3. Seashell Blast. In 1963, the CIA considered trying to lure Castro to his death by diving with a large, brightly painted seashell packed with explosives, because he enjoyed diving almost as much as he enjoyed cigars and ice cream. It would be dropped into a diving spot Castro frequented, where it would be set to explode. To this end, the CIA bought a lot of shells, but there's no sign that the weaponized marine life was ever used. 4. Human flesh-eating wetsuit. In 1961, this strategy got pretty far. The CIA's Research and Development Division contaminated a diving suit with tuberculosis and a skin disease-causing fungus. Now all that was needed was to convince Castro to don it. An influential American attorney who had been leading negotiations with Castro was enlisted as an unwitting partner to deliver the lawsuit to the Cuban leader. When he was tipped off by a CIA lawyer, the plan collapsed. 5. Murdering someone's good name. Not all of the assassination attempts were successful. The CIA and other American intelligence agencies first tried less lethal means of discrediting Castro's reputation as a charismatic strongman. The CIA plotted to sabotage Castro's speeches in 1960 by spraying a chemical into his broadcasting studio that would give him hallucinations similar to those caused by LSD. To prevent the dictator from regaining his bearings before delivering one of his marathon oratory performances, it was planned to poison his cigars. Additionally, they attempted to have Castro's famous beard wiped out by dusting thallium salts into his shoes. Attempts to assassinate Castro were unsuccessful, as had been the case with hundreds of others. Castro scrapped the overseas trip that would have given spies a chance to check his footwear. The LSD-like substance was abandoned as too unstable, and nobody ever got around to lighting up the cigars. 6. Toxic Kingpin. The CIA's plot to assassinate Castro with a hypodermic needle hidden in a pen was also lifted straight from the pages of James Bond. The casualty would not notice its insertion, the church committee claimed, because the needle was so small. According to the report, the CIA had been in contact with a high-ranking Cuban official who planned to poison injection and give it to Castro. The Cuban official, however, did not think much of the device and began grumbling that obviously, the CIA could come up with something more intelligent than that. As stated in the report compiled by the committee, bad luck struck twice for the official. The day of John F. Kennedy's murder, November 22, 1963, he was presented with a pen. As a result of this incident, the agency withdrew its support for the assassination attempt, and the official never traveled to Cuba to carry out the mission. 7. Fatal Lover. Marita Lawrence was Castro's seductress, even if many of these efforts had the duplicity of a James Bond movie. In 1993, Lawrence claimed to Vanity Fair that the CIA had recruited her while she was Castro's sweetheart in late 1959 and given her the mission of killing the Cuban leader. According to her story, she was provided 2 botulism toxin pills to put in Castro's drink. One would be enough to murder him in 30 seconds, but she was afraid to risk it. She told Vanity Fair, "I was unable to proceed after seeing the cityscape of Havana." This was how she felt after her first glimpse of Havana. To make matters worse, even if she intended to murder him, she had done a poor job of it. She claimed she had hidden the pills in a jar of cold cream, rendering them useless due to a chemical reaction. Anyway, Castro had beaten her senseless. He leaned over and drew his .45, and handed it to me, she said. He showed no signs of discomfort at all. And then he said, "You can't kill me. No one is able to harm me." And he smiled a little while smoking his cigar. The mood I was in was low. He had complete faith in me. He suddenly grabbed me. We engaged in sexual activity. When compared to the evidence uncovered by the church committee, her account lacks credibility. But the CIA's history makes this scenario seem more likely than not. 8. The hesitant Cuban. The CIA recruited 2 gangsters to aid in the overthrow of Castro months earlier, towards the end of President Dwight Eisenhower's term. The report from the church committee stated that the organization was prepared to pay $150,000, at least $1.2 million in today's money. Sam Giancana, the head of the Chicago mob, and Santos Traficant, the leader of the Cuban mob, were the 2 mobsters in question. As a pair, they were on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. The subcommittee reported that after Giancana suggested that poison pills were more efficient than guns, the CIA supplied 6 pills of high lethal content to a cash-strapped Cuban authority that had access to Castro. After a series of failed attempts, however, the Cuban eventually gave up. Castro survived all of these attempts, and he has been a central figure in Cuban politics for well over 50 years. He persisted in his position as head of state through a number of perilous situations, such as the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the tightening of the U.S. embargo on Cuba. Castro announced his resignation as Cuba's president in 2008, at the age of 81, handing power to his brother Raul. Fidel Castro's health had been deteriorating for some time, and he had been suffering from various ailments, including diverticulitis and pulmonary infection. His deteriorating health eventually led to his death on November 25, 2016, at the age of 90. With this chapter closed, we have gained a better understanding of the intricate web of power, politics, and intrigue that permeated that era in Cuba's history. The attempted assassination of Fidel Castro is a fascinating historical footnote that continues to captivate and intrigue us. If you liked this video and want to see more content about the amazing events that have shaped our world, please subscribe to our channel and spread the word. Until then, never stop looking for the untold tales that give our world its boundless allure.